Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Miles, and you're tuning in at X-Rays, where knowledge meets inspiration in the intricate dance of industry evolution. I'm back to unpack what's happening behind the buzzwords and break down the future of business with one of the leaders building it. And I'm sure each one of us have heard that AI is coming for our job or our soul, or at the very least, your inbox. We're all watching this rapid march of artificial intelligence with a strange cocktail of awe and anxiety. But beneath all the flashy tools and robotic recruiters, there's this critical question still nobody's really answering. What about the humans that made this all possible in the first place? So, our guest today is one of those rare voices cutting through the noise with clarity, ethics, and a dash of rebellion against AI gone rogue. If you have ever worried that we're rushing into AI like it's a Black Friday sale, you're absolutely not alone. This gentleman has been ringing the bell long before it became fashionable. He is leading ACI Global and Equip, an ISO certified international educational leader that doesn't just talk about continuous improvement, it accelerates it. His mission has always been centered on the idea that a company's greatest asset isn't its tech, but rather its people. They train professionals and redefine what quality and sustainability should look like in the 21st century. And he's taking us today into the intersection of total quality management, or TQM, and the not so total responsibility being shown in the wild west of artificial intelligence. So, with that, let's raise the conversation literally and figuratively with the managing director and CEO of ACI Global and Equip, Ian Erskine. Hi.
Hi, Miles, and again, welcome and welcome to all our viewers. And whilst this is a rather, in some respects, scary in reference to the impact, it's actually, I'm going to put a positive on it because from the research we've done, and in this episode, we're going to talk about the impact of human intelligence in brackets HIM of people and their organisations. And when we talk about that, then what we're trying to demonstrate with this is we would like people just to stop and think when they click on that little chat bot, okay, and for the first time, they're then asked to give the chat bot your email address and things like that. Just stop and think, and particularly if you have your mic on and your camera on, just stop and think and reflect what is happening with your human intelligence, your brain, right? You personally, stop and think what is actually happening to that information. Because that's the thing that we want to concentrate on today and drill down a little bit into it when we talk about TQM.
Yeah. Well, thank you for giving us a kickstart to this. And in a world that's, embracing AI faster than we can spell chat GPT, the narrative has shifted from innovation to concern, especially now that even the godfather of AI, Geoffrey Hinton, as he shared with me, is sounding the alarm on what he helped create. So, Ian, from your total quality management lens, where do you think organizations are getting it wrong or missing the mark entirely when it comes to integrating AI responsibly?
I think where we're all getting it wrong, and yes, ACI Global and even Ian Erskine got it wrong, because initially, and I'm not sure all the viewers know this, but initially we actually ran ChatGPT AI on our computer. We moved along to the point where we actually had it actually speaking back to people, right? So we had to select the language, have to select an image to put there, and so forth. And we were never able, or I was never able to be confident with what was happening. And particularly when we put it across to voice and use that part of the AI, I must admit I started to feel a little bit eerie. It was a little bit scary to think that it was a machine, and this is real. The machine was actually talking back to myself, okay? And so that's where all this started. And we then questioned really where that was going, and we came to the conclusion that we always wanted to be a certification, education and certification body which dealt with people. So we wanted to have that interaction person on person. So that hence people do know that we've partnered with Servcorp. So at any given hour of the day, right around the world, someone can pick up the phone, speak to a real person and feel that. And I'm sure you have the same instance when you speak to someone and you get to know them, that there's a sense of feeling of transition between you two. Doesn't matter whether you're from one side of the world to the other. There's that love and that understanding and feeling between you both when you're talking.
Right.
And going back to when we had it on our website, that's where it got scary, because it was coming over with the voice, but that was all it was. And because obviously we were feeding it with the information, I knew exactly what it was going to say and come back and answer me. And I was thinking to myself, well, why am I not there in person answering that phone or answering that inquiry? So that's where all this has come from. And again, I get people just to stop, as I said, stop and think when they click on that little chat bot, because that's when you yourself, your mannerisms, what's in your brain, your voice, your interactions are starting to be mined.
Yeah.
That's being taken away, and that's put in a big center on a platform. And look, we are openly asking the questions to the big platform providers and as many other people that so-called provide this technology. We're just asking the simple question. Where are the algorithms? Where is the data stored? And then the final one, where we will start to talk, and we will go over this in a lot more detail in our next episode when we talk about knowledge management. What we're now asking is, particularly in our case, when we started using it, I've now approached the owner or the person that ran it on a platform. I'm now asking, okay, we want that information back, right? We want all that information back, but above all, we need to have an understanding, or it needs to be known from the platform to ourselves, how they are going to delete that information. Because it's not just a matter of deleting it, because if you delete it, that just goes into a deleted folder on someone's server, right? So they have to be able to demonstrate that is not only archived, but is, if, as in my case, we're wanting it removed completely. We don't want it just archived. We want it removed completely, wiped from that platform or their computers. So that's going to be the telling next step, because, as I said, go back to when you click on that chatbot, as long as you understand what you're saying, what they can hear you saying, what they can see you, the reflections in your eyes and your mannerisms, if you understand, that's fine for that to go somewhere else. That's fine. I'm comfortable with that. But I would say 99% of people don't understand the ramifications of that action at this stage.
Right. Well, we're really spinning towards something powerful but dangerously untested. It's just wild to think that quality, arguably the first thing we should focus on, is the first thing thrown out when AI comes knocking, plus the data privacy and all those concerns, compliance, etc. And I remember, Ian, you've also long emphasized that people, not platforms, are an organization's most valuable resource. So in this age of AI, where resumes, for example, are scanned by bots and decisions are increasingly automated, how can businesses refocus on empowering their human capital, competence, skills, capability, instead of mining them like data points?
I'm sure this happens in organisations. When organisations sit down and they talk to their team members, their employees in a group. you're either sitting there in a round table or someone standing up talking to you. When you're asking a question of a certain person, you look them in the eye, you ask the question, and you yourself personally observe their response when they're answering that question,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And that makes it very real because you're getting a true interaction between two people, right? Now, going back to what we said, people are the organisation's most important asset. So the problem I have with allowing our intelligence to be collectively mined and used, and what it is, it's being used for an experimental process, right? Because they openly say this. They're now coming out and saying that whilst in the short term, quite a number of jobs will be lost, but we need to go through this process to ensure that it works.
Yeah.
So ultimately, what they're saying is, sorry, guys, you're going to lose your job first before we get all this perfected, right? But they don't tell you once they get it perfected and then put into certain roles and functions, for argument's sake, the customer service industry. And
Mhm.
sorry, I'm sticking my hand up and saying the customer service industry is one of the first, and it is already being hit big time, where call centres are collectively being closed down,
Mhm.
right, and replaced by AI. But going back to what I said, if you can stand or you can sit, even the interaction between you and I, you can see my mannerisms. You can see when you ask me a question, and I know you do, the passion and the values and my beliefs coming through, right?
Mhm.
Now, what we all have to understand, you will never, ever be able to capture that in a machine,
Uh-huh.
okay? And going back to what you said, The Godfather has now pulled up the red flag, and one of the phrases he was talking about, you know, in actual fact, the machines are now becoming quite clever. And he mentioned a case where they had a cat. They held the cat up, and the machine was able to recognise the cat,
Uh-huh.
right? And then they took the cat away and they put a cube in front of the camera. And then they asked the machine, can you still see the cat? Now, the machine couldn't see the cat, right?
Uh-huh.
And his initial response was no. But then when they went back and tried it again later, the machine said, oh, yes, it's a cat.
Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
it was remembering what had been, it had picked up the image, right? And this is where we have to be ultra, ultra careful because, again, this is what we're talking about. We're
Mhm.
talking about the organisation's major asset, which are their people
Mhm.
and their intelligence.
Mhm.
Now, we'll talk a little bit later with this, and we'll go over it again when we're talking about um, knowledge management. There is a very, very simple remedy for this. And that is quite clearly something that we will discuss in future episodes, where you don't have to allow this to happen because you can keep it all within your own databases by referencing and talking to your people
Mhm.
one on one or in a group. Doesn't matter how you do it. That way it becomes real. You can understand how people react to situations. It's a bit
Mhm.
like, and I shudder to think how a person would come to actually do it. But if you've had a severe financial downturn and the business lost all its money,
Mhm.
sooner or later the managing director has to stand up in front of all the employees and say, apologise, but there's not going to be a business for you to come to next Monday. This is the end of the road, right?
Yeah.
We won't be able to continue to pay your pay packets for you to put food on the table. That is an horrendous thing. Just imagine how you would feel, right,
Yeah.
receiving that information. And just imagine, for argument's sake, if I was the managing director, the concern, the hurt that you would have to portray, okay? And this is what true interaction of human intelligence is, and we have to stop it being mined and allowed to be pushed across and at the end of the day, thrown out the window and left to a machine. Because that's what it all is about, machine intelligence mining.
That's why I guess we always have to upskill. And I always like how you put the spotlight back where it belongs, Ian, on the people driving the process, not the code actually executing it. So
Yes.
let's talk practicalities. From ACI Global standpoint, how does total management or total quality management actually apply when it comes to designing and deploying AI systems?
Well, the basic question everyone needs to ask themselves is whenever you put a process in place, there's a total quality management process or a quality checking process of which you go through to check to make sure that process is working or processes are working correctly. So what we at ACI Global have done, we've taken the 6 or 7 main principles of TQM, and one of the main ones is customer focus, right? There's a few others in reference to ethics and information and so forth, but the really big one is customer focus. And if I put my auditing hat on as a third party auditor, there is absolutely no way I can tick that off and approve it in reference to customer focus. Now, I've gone through each of the 7 TQM principles, right? And at every single level, there's a fail. Now, again, and I've had this only a couple of days ago, when someone has come back and said, excuse me, I said, well, you don't fully understand what's going on. And I've gone back to them and I said, that may well be the case. But the reason why we don't fully understand is after constant questioning where the algorithms, how do the algorithms work, give us an understanding of that. No, there's a lot throw their hands up and says no. And that's what I'm saying. We've put the TQM principles and process checklist over it, and it fails in every single case.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I'm happy to be proved wrong. If someone wants to come up, open it up and allow people to go through, test and review the algorithms in their own workplaces or personally one-on-one, beauty, well done. Not a problem with that, right? And that's where I think the fail is this object secrecy or pushing people off. And look, I've had another case where I questioned one of the certification providers' statements where he came up and said, now is the time for certification bodies and standards to embrace AI technology. Now, I just simply answered that by saying no, until we know more about it. We know where the algorithms are, how they work, how they mine people's intelligence, right? You can't do that. Well, what simply happened, he just pulled my response straight off.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I got up the next morning and I went to the post and, it's been pulled down. And he sent me an email and said, I pulled it down because you were misrepresenting the case and so forth. And anyway, I just responded by thank you for taking my post down. You've basically answered my question by simply saying what you've done. You've just re-emphasised that there is not enough information out there, particularly for a certification body, for goodness sake, saying, okay, and one of them's come out today and said, it's magnificent because it will allow us to reduce the time we take to assess a risk. Okay. Now I'm thinking to myself, woo, hold on. As you know, I always talk about in reference to risk. The number one rule is if it's foreseeable, you have to do something about it.
I remember.
Now, if someone comes to me and says, oh, we've assessed risk because we have a machine app that determines whether it's high, low, foreseeable or whatever, I'm going to simply say, okay, guys, show me. let me be blown out of the water, but I can guarantee it will not be effective as a real person or real people looking into that foreseeable risk, mitigating it and controlling it.
Yeah, right. With what you said earlier, Ian, it's like packaging uncertainty and calling it innovation, which sounds like a quality recall waiting to happen. The bottom line here is to have the highest quality standards as possible. And I guess what you're also saying here should honestly be staple to every project manager's desk. And one of the core messages I remember you champion is the power of onboarding, induction, and continuous improvement. But when AI tools evolve faster than most training departments can blink, where does that leave long term competence and quality assurance, Ian?
Well, it leaves it completely up in the air. And it takes me back to a question I was asking one of the big providers. And I think it took me 10 goes to get him to even come back and answer the question, where are the algorithms? Are we able to review or amend or edit the algorithms to ensure they're fit for purpose? And
Mm-hmm.
basically came back and he said, no, you will never have that on the big platforms. And I think you've heard me say this. And I said, well, that's fine. Okay, as a learning body, we've trained a person to be competent to climb up and down a ladder.
Uh-huh.
Okay, a couple of weeks after he's received his certificates, he falls off a ladder and breaks his neck. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm hurled up and I stand up in front of the judge, and he asked me, "Can you please explain?" And I will simply say, well, I'm sorry, Your Honour, but that was the algorithms. We rely on the algorithms to determine his capabilities. He would
Mm-hmm.
just reach into his pocket, take out his keys, and hand it to me. There's your keys to your jail cell, Mr. Erskine. And it's as simple as that. It's as simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot allow, and this is where sometimes I question the motives of people. Again, in our research, we've found that people are now blowing the whistle and they're saying, for America, for argument's sake, they're looking at their average levels of unemployment run somewhere between 2.5, 6, around about that level. These people are now openly blowing the whistle and saying, in 5 to 10 years' time, that could be 20 to 25 to 30% unemployment level.
Mm-hmm.
And let's go back. Let's look at the real life scenarios. Again, as I've mentioned to you, we're going on an overseas holiday to England and going across to Paris. So
Mm-hmm.
we booked our URail pass,
Yeah.
right? And I said, oh, this would be good. I'll be able to go onto their website and be able to speak to someone when we're looking, when we get off the train, get onto another train and so forth. And sorry, there's no customer service centre. There's no customer service person to speak to, okay? All you have is a chatbot, and it probably takes you about 15 minutes, and then he'll eventually, the chatbot, the machine, will tell you, no, you have to go to a customer forum, right? So then you look up the customer forum, and they openly say, you can't rely on us if you're travelling within a week, but if you're travelling within, 2-3 months' time, we will give you an answer, and then you go on and do some research of what people think of that. And basically, it's 95% of people say you don't get a reliable answer. So
Right.
it's fine for us wanting to go from Australia over to England. I'm now looking for a person that I can actually speak to with confidence that can give me some of the ins and outs of the finer details of our travel plan.
Yeah.
So, if you look at Eurail, they have retrenched thousands of people from customer service jobs because they now don't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm. It's still indeed essential and still proven efficient and trustworthy to have a real human helping us with our concerns in general. I mean, like doctor's appointment and stuff like that, right?
Well, I totally agree. And as you know, ACI Global, we've partnered with Servcorp, and they're our human face. They're our human voice. At any hour of the day, we have a global dial where people can pick up the phone and they can speak one on one with them. Okay. And look, I don't think we're too far away where you'll be able to see that person on your phone,
Yeah.
right? In
Mm-hmm.
actual fact, from mobile phone to mobile phone, you can do that now, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I don't think we're too far away from that technology where we'll be able to see the person we're talking to. And
Mm-hmm.
as I said, that is so important to see their reaction if you ask them a question.
Mm-hmm.
Be able to laugh together. And it could be a mistake. You've said, what a silly goose I am, and you've
Uh-huh.
laughed at each other, right? A machine can't do that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Making it more human. And so
Yes.
thank you for sharing your insights on earlier the gaps in education in that sense, your example, and the need for flexible learning and executing the task in the right way and the role of continuous improvement model. And we're asking people here to actually trust the process without giving them the tools to even understand it. And now let's proceed with what I think is the boardroom size elephant in the room, Ian, strategy. With AI now writing code, screening candidates, and even making executive decisions, what role should today's leadership play in protecting their people, their data, and their values while still driving innovation?
Well, I think I just touched on this a little bit before in one of
Yeah.
my answers.
Mm-hmm.
And we all have to stand up and step up to the plate. And we now have to go back and say, no, we're not going to allow a machine to step up and start to take part of my decision making away from me.
Uh-huh.
We will always have to have and be able to demonstrate that decision making qualities, right? And it's as simple as that. And
Mm-hmm.
look, we've had organisations come back to us already and say, oh, but you're then going to expect us to have data servers on our properties and so forth. And I'm simply saying, well, that's not such a bad idea. It's
Uh-huh.
not a costly idea. All you have to do is instead of throwing your old desktop box that sits on the floor, don't throw them out ever again. Keep control of those.
Mm-hmm.
That's where your data will be stored, right? Yes, you will have to put mechanisms in where you can have that stored at a third party's premises or something like that. That is not hard to do. We do that at ACI Global. We have our standard data goes into our servers in New Zealand, but we
Mm-hmm.
also have an additional third party independent database, right? Where the extra security of that data is stored. So at any given time,
Mm-hmm.
we can demonstrate to a third party or whatever that's how our process is done. You bring it back in-house where it's completely controlled. But again, broadly speaking, what you're doing is you're taking back and gaining full control of your own intelligence. You're not allowing your intelligence to be used and then modeled into a computer. You're keeping in that to yourself and demonstrating to your leadership team that, hang on, I've been trained, I'm capable, I'm deserved of merit. I will continue to improve through accelerating continuous improvement processes and techniques to ensure that not only my targets are achieved, your business, our business, because I like to think that all employees become involved and treat the business as their own, right? So, and the old analogy, as we've spoken before, like you're all in a boat, so you have to row in the same rhythm,
Uh-huh.
same intensity, have
Right.
the same target where you're going for you to be successful. But you
Mm-hmm.
do that yourself. You don't have a laptop sitting in your lap guiding you how fast you're going to row or how slow. You do that yourself.
Right, right. And I agree. Leadership can't just stay in the passenger seat of this AI ride. They have to be the designated driver and the navigator. And with what you
Yes.
said, and with what you said, Ian, reminds me that innovation without ethics and the right thing to do is it's not progress. It's just chaos with maybe maybe better branding. And with what ACI Global has in store for organizations, doing the right thing is absolutely always possible. So
Yes, yes.
let's wrap this up, Ian. Thank you so much for bringing depth, clarity, and quite frankly, a much needed reality check to this conversation. Your insights are always a compass in what's starting to feel like a very fast moving fog. So thank you so much.
And and again, thank you so much. And just remind all our viewers, the next episode, this will be getting towards the end of this trilogy, I guess,
Yeah.
will be on knowledge management.
Yes, got that. And I'm excited about that next episode.
Okay. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much, Miles.
If you've been tuning in, we've unpacked today that the AI boom is actually about trust, training, and total quality management. And if we're going to build AI that truly works for us, I guess we need to start with systems that respect the very intelligence they're trying to replicate, ours. So if your organization is trying to future proof itself the right way, connect now with ACI Global through the links below to explore their programs, certifications, and continuous improvement model that's helping professionals actually keep up. And that's pretty much it for this episode with Ian, where the only thing more valuable than your time is how we use it to spark conversations like this. Until our next one with Ian, this has been your host, Miles. Stay focused and inspired with X Rays.